SM, the Media Project. SM Graves Associates is partnered with Rove Creations to offer design-build services in residential and mixed-use development. We believe in building neighborhoods from the bottom up. We're dedicated to solving the middle market housing challenge in both rural and urban environments. If you'd like to engage an innovative and detail-oriented design-build firm, we'd like to hear from you. Find out more at smgravesassociates.com/community development.
We're launching a closer look at artificial intelligence, how it has and will shape our society, how you can shape and inform perspective around what's sure to play a significant role affecting all of us for centuries to come. Rather than do this investigation from a good-bad standpoint, we'd rather treat all of you, our listeners, as the smart and curious people that we know you are. So away we go. Our guest, Meltem Ballan, has over 20 years of experience in digital technology, data science, and AI. She is a leader, entrepreneur, and advisor who is passionate about creating innovative and impactful solutions for complex problems. She is the principal and founder of Concrete Engine and currently a venture partner with Greenlight Ventures. She holds a Ph.D. in complex systems and brain sciences with a focus on computer vision, visual cortex, and natural language processing. She is committed to fostering true diversity and inclusion in the STEM domain, especially AI and data science. We're looking at AI and neurodiversity in today's podcast. I'm excited to have you here, Meltem. Hey, welcome. Welcome to the Are We Here Yet podcast. It's good to have you here.
Thank you very much, Scott. It's been a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the great introduction as well. I'm really stuck right now. I'm thrilled to be here.
We like to make all of our guests feel excited and pumped, and everyone deserves to have their name up in lights, so to speak, right? Especially for doing the kind of good work that you're doing. So we're here to talk about neurodiversity and artificial intelligence. We're hearing in a variety of circles how there's a concern about artificial intelligence and how it can be or is being used exclusionary. Help us drill down to specifically what maybe issues there are first, and then we'll maybe talk about opportunities for neurodiversity in the realm of artificial intelligence.
Definitely. So when we talk about artificial intelligence, it really explains itself. It is artificial and there's an intelligence in it. So the artificial part definitely makes it the fact that we put some information to AI, to the system, and system gives us an answer. The problem is in that black box that we make a lot of assumptions, and if the algorithm is not very explainable, what we are doing is not very explainable, we make assumptions. So we tell algorithm that I have 5 different groups, for example, 5 different people in a room. But in reality, this might be maybe 6 different people, but our perception might be showing as if our perception or knowledge is showing that being 5 different people sitting in a room or a group of people sitting in a room. But we told AI that system, however we call it, that we have 5 different people sitting in that room. So AI is going to tell us there are X number of people, but they are grouped in these 5 different people groups. So that is the problem. So we are putting our bias and limiting our knowledge to this AI systems. And It also affects if we use 5 different people to tell AI, this is what is in this room, and if there is no diversity in those 5 people's knowledge, we are still going to train these algorithms in the sense that they are biased, there are limitations. That's one of the biggest concerns. The second one is obviously going back to data, the limitations in data, how we are training these algorithms. One of the famous examples is the fact that AI systems that were trained by Google identified Black African Americans are the criminals. And this is the bias that we have in society. This came to the AI systems. And as we let these AI systems to learn recursively, these biases are gonna grow. This will create bigger problems, bigger ethical concerns from the AI perspective. Neurodiversity is a deep topic that we just started to talk about. So we are not even on the iceberg part, because we only know certain spectrums. We talk about autism. We just started to talk about ADHD, dyslexia. There are other neurodiversities that we don't even address. So how are we going to train? How are we going to give those senses, the perceptual differences to AI is another problem that we haven't even started to talk about.
This is true. We're still convincing mass amounts of the globe's population of the validity of some of these neurodivergent perspectives, right? Or even change their idea that, well, is this some kind of like handicap? It's not a handicap. It's just simply a different neurological way to be.
The point is that there is a stigma, and most people don't even want to come out and talk about their neurodiversity or their children's neurodiversity. When I was at academia, I work on particular neurodiversity called dyscalculia. This affects your computational skills and computational perspective. And within this category, some of the people are only affected by the distance. Some other people are affected by arithmetics. And then societal stigma comes on top of that. When I was interviewing my subjects, the participants in this study, and their parents, if the kid is, or young adult is woman or girl, it happens to be that the gender that they are not supposed to learn math well, so they never get diagnosis about their neurodiversity. So there is, in society, there is already a bias what we fit in and how we put neurodiversity in different boxes and different genders. There are also race component of it. So it becomes a big, complex problem that is hard to really address. Luckily, there are tools to help neurodiversity, but there is no tool to address or understand the data coming from neurodiverse people feeding into those generative models.
And differentiating their
perception,
their uniqueness, their perception. You started off by making a very keen point that we all have to remember when we're talking about any form of digital technology, which is sort of the old, garbage in, garbage out, right? In other words, it's intelligent in that it's going to derive over time, but in the first place, it's our inputs that create something, right? In this particular case, it brings to mind the idea that perhaps if we maximized somehow a maximum of spectrum of perspectives entering at a rapid pace into artificial intelligence, wouldn't that in part or in whole solve the issue of it's still going to mean all these biases are there because they're simply ours and we're inputting them, but wouldn't it create more diversity in that way? What is there any, has there been any thought to this point to that in trying to achieve that at the input level?
Yeah.
Or is that not even a solution to the problem?
Well, I mean, that's how the OpenAI started. We have been doing the AI, we have been doing different forms and perspectives of large language models, computer vision. Our biggest problems like 20 years ago, even 5 years ago, even now, is being able to manage this big of a data and how we are going to label it, annotate the data, prepare for these algorithms. That is still kind of the nitty-gritties of the problem. So if we cannot prepare this data and control the privacy, that is going to be the problem. The more data we push, the faster we get, is not going to solve those privacy problems. It's not going to solve the labeling issues, whether the data is labeled correctly, whether the data is appropriate for the models that we are running. I know people are talking about this generalized models, but generalized models are going to come with the bias itself, and there is something called hallucination. And the more the data we give, the more the less the information we provide for these systems, they are gonna try making up their own stuff.
Oh, that's interesting, because they're programmed to derive,
So
a sort of a string of results, right? So you're almost describing a situation of, you can have privacy, you can have more diversity, but you can't have both. And yes. I can see in the logistics of trying to do that. I'm trying to imagine this for myself. Like, I can actually see that, oh yeah, wait a minute. You can't, I immediately readily see the importance of more diversity and more inputs. But and as we've learned with it's really one of the predominant financial models, which are, in my view, a disaster in a lot of ways for numerous digital technologies, numerous platforms, is the issue of privacy and the financial modeling, right? That we're selling people's identities, in order to, it's a predatory business model, right? Where those two sort of intersect is that's unfortunate, to say the least. You can't have a dual positive outcome.
Yeah, definitely. This will be a little bit of an advertisement, but on my LinkedIn post, the newsletter, I write about all things AI, and I try to simplify AI. A couple of months ago, I wrote a short newsletter about the OpenAI and specifically Playground AI. When you ask certain questions, you start seeing their training data. In Playground AI case, I started to ask questions about, show me a technology leader. This was my question to prompt the picture. And then a male picture was prompted. And then I started another prompt asking, can you give me a portrait of a female business leader? And that female brought back again the same gentleman with a longer hair. So you start
I only
seeing,
laugh because of the absurdity of it. I mean, it's like,
you start seeing that those nuances in data. And then I prompted OpenAI with some questions about LinkedIn, some questions about the profiles. Then when I asked about, can you give me some information about Meltem Ballan? And the information comes up, I'm 30 under 30 on Forbes, and I am actually a blog editor in Washington Post. So this never happened. This is kind of model poisoning. And then you start seeing those prompts are actually bringing up the sources that they are trained, and how limited they are in this, how biased they are in the sense that we're talking about. And obviously, I never worked for Google. So recently, Google researchers came with more systematic approach, and they figured it out where the OpenAI models were trained. So that data, this feud between these two big corporates brought up again the importance of the data. And we call it corpus. Corpus can be large or small, but usually it's bigger than the data sets, and it reveals more information. It's super data set. So that super data set that they trained their algorithm started to come out. So this begs the second question, whether all those corporates who are not, or the small companies who are either lacking the funds or not digital ready, what should they do? They should actually not kind of throw away what they have from their initial data governance models, their data science models. They should actually paying more attention to that, and they should start preparing for this next gen AI 2.0.
sure.
So honestly, those are the problems, but there are a lot of opportunities out there as well.
So as a segue to sort of a bit on the opportunities, in other iterative processes that industries use at their core, for lack of a better way to characterize it, dilution is the solution to pollution, right? So is there a digital equivalent to that concept that would overtake inherent biases that were inputted early on into the process? Or is really the only solution to have delayed launch further until there was enough, non-privacy issue, but diverse information to have launched the first gen AI in the first place?
Like traditionally we have unit tests. So unit testing and test, instead of using running the model, we can actually unit test and validate the models with the information they have and the information we know. So it's still a hybrid model that we need to push and pull those models to the point where we get a high efficacy.
Interesting.
So it's gonna be, I think, a little bit of pull and push, a lot of error checking and ranking. That's where OpenAI started. A real person was ranking their models, their outputs, and it worked. Now OpenAI is a giant robot, chatbot, and it is working. But furthermore, we need to have those rankers to really come to that point that this data really makes money or gives us value.
So let's talk in more detail about, you know, the opportunities, right? Which are solutions. I mean, where does it begin?
It's huge. It's like as Elon Musk said, it's infinitive. And where it starts with the verticals that we haven't been talking a lot about, like the agriculture technologies. They talk about the precision farming. We talk about food safety, healthcare. We haven't even scratched the surface. It's a very complicated problem. It's data heavy. And there are other verticals where it involves a lot of human road safety, and
well, just any situation.
Any
you can create a situation where you create earlier in the season, we're talking about the bionic worker, right? Take all of the mundane data analysis, data collection, and have it happen virtually in real time while the human is allowed to just do the creative, strategic work that you can do once you've collected all of that information, you know, like truly creating a bionic worker.
Yes, but the opportunities are in those verticals, not all in the AI. So now when we look at the technology companies, FANG, all those FANG companies are saturated with technology. And since they are done with their technology development, you see a lot of technologists are transitioning. And this is a huge opportunity for those verticals that have historically a lot of manual work, and they haven't completed their digital transformation, so that they can actually get a glimpse at those technology digital transformations. Then they can be at a level that OpenAI products or generative AI products anywhere in between can serve them. Yep. But they have a long way to go. Digital transformation, creating the value out of data, value proposition, building a value around that. Those are all the process that they need to take before they move to the product. And the opportunity is actually leveraging all those tech workers they were released from FANG.
For the neurodivergent themselves, can we leverage AI technology to create, I'm thinking along the lines of like the most directive solutions for people who are part of the neurodivergence spectrum. Can it make them better communicators in ways that they feel like it's harder for them to communicate, or for people that who fit into the group of having challenges with certain sort of social cues? So I'm thinking, are there other ways specific to neurodivergent groups that it makes life better for those people?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm gonna talk about little bit my perspective being neurodivergent and often about it. I was diagnosed after my 40s, and it was a relief, but at the same time it was so scary to know what is going on. I always knew, but it was not apparent to me or anybody else. So with generative AI, um, I use generative AI to proofread some of the text that I write, because my problem is called cluttering, and cluttering affects my speech pattern and writing pattern. So I initially used generative AI to correct and proofread the text, as I mentioned, and it's wonderful. It's not quite there yet. Maybe my cluttering, my neurodiversity is trained, but that's a great opportunity for that. There are also products out there, and I am an ambassador and advocate for one of them because I used in my classrooms. It's called Atlas Primer. Some of my students that I have taught over the course of last couple of years are neurodivergent, and they cannot concentrate on the reading materials, but their auditory sensation is very strong. So this Atlas Primer offers an auditory tool for those students to listen to the book and interactively stop the book and ask questions about the book. That definitely increased the attendance in the classrooms, and it also increased the attendance from the non-English speakers. So even though we targeted only neurodivergent groups, it also affected the performance of my non-English speaking group. So those tools are really, even though they target one part of the groups, assumably it is helping it as a society. But I want to address that AI itself is neurodivergent because it doesn't have any sensory understanding in the sense that we have. And
Right, yeah.
most neurodivergent people have different sensory understanding. Sometimes they don't. And there might be some use cases that generative AI can be used to mimic the neurodivergent data. But I'm looking at it from a different perspective right now. What if we give perception to AI? Because as human beings, we are fallible. So we can be fooled easily, our perceptions, sensory perceptions, for example, optical illusion. And that's what I'm very interested in. But there are auditory illusions. There are tactile illusions where we touch and feel different textures. Those are the perception that we have. It as human being, we fail to make the right decisions about those cases. And the best optical illusion is actually it's called Amos room. And Dr. Amos, he was a psychologist. He found about Amos rooms in 1945, 46. And it has been used widely in the movie technologies. So if you remember Willy Wonka, the original Willy Wonka, Willy Wonka is a giant in the factory, chocolate factory.
When they walk down the hall,
yes,
they go
and
from
the
normal size.
Oompa Loompas are little.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's the Amos room. So the room is not rectangle. So the room, the back of the room is a triangle. So the further away you are from the camera or the viewpoint, you become smaller. So they put the Willy Wonka closest to the camera and everybody is back, but our eye never sees that triangle.
That swing, yeah.
And then it is always the rectangle. So whatever the closest one to the camera, it looks the largest. But when we put this perspective to generative AI or any AI model, it's gonna know the size. So it's gonna tell us that everybody is in the same size. The other one is actually Lord of the Ring for the younger listeners. Lord of the Ring used that effect with the giants and the dwarves in their houses and their caves. So that perception, if we can give that perception to generative AI, we can also change the perception from a neurodivergent perspective. So that's what I am interested in.
This brings to mind, one of the most fragile things that humans could, we talk ourselves into things a lot, right? And, speaking of illusions, and I just wonder that since artificial intelligence, which you stated right from the very beginning, we have to remember that it is in fact artificial. I wonder if it can be leveraged in ways that can help us. I'm talking about with core decision making, international relations, things that have high stakes results, right, in mind. I wonder if it can be used in ways to help us avoid catastrophes that often start when we're telling us a story that isn't reality, that doesn't exist, but we want it to.
Yeah, definitely. So if we tell generative AI that, like the illusion, if we manually annotate that data and tell what our perspective is, it will be the same thing, that we constantly lie to ourselves or convince ourselves that something which is not true. Those cases, if we give those cases to generative AI, it will start addressing those problems, because we as the creators of the generative AI, the goal is to please people. So whatever we tell, it will tell us back, because the goal is to serve us, not to master us. So therefore, if we can tell generative AI what the illusion is and what the reality is, it will start learning. It will never become a flash, but it will start learning.
Interesting. Other opportunities. What do you think about the idea that as long as we keep flooding the airwaves, so to speak, with positive uses of this technology, we somehow reduce nefarious means, simply because there's only so much bandwidth that folks can handle? And I don't even know if that's a valid question, but I keep thinking about, well, if we hide from this, general society often hides from big technology moves or big apocryphal changes in society until it's too late, right? The change has happened. We're not now leveraging the change in the best way possible, which allows for nefarious actors to sort of lead the way. I just wonder if I don't want this to become an equivalency, right? That's just like, why can't we properly leverage this? I don't know. There's probably 10 questions in my statement.
Yeah,
I apologize.
yes. I'm just going to answer this question from a different angle. All these innovations, the big moves, require one thing, only one thing, an innovative mind, but more importantly, money and investments. That is why 1% of the groups are responsible from the change and from these big happenings in technology, because they have the means, they have the support, they hire the best brains, they buy the best equipment.
But they also represent a very small percentage of humanity. Yeah.
Yes, by the time they built this thing, it is too late for others to come in and join to the innovation. I have talked about this in a panel a couple of years ago with CERN. We were discussing about the deep tech. Deep tech is not getting a lot of support from the venture capitals. Deep tech is not getting a lot of support from the corporates because it's uncertain. So, and it's long, and the growth is neither here nor there. They have to start from one place, and they give it to the people that they know, and it just over and over circle backs, and eventually the deep tech doesn't go anywhere. The innovation ends someplace. The same thing, unless we take action and we look from the innovative angle, it might be the same way with the OpenAI case. OpenAI started this move, and then now we are seeing the big players like Google following that. Initially, Amazon said they are not going to be part of the game. Now they are pushing that box, and then Microsoft obviously having part of OpenAI. They were hoping that they will be competitive to Google's search engine, and then we are still having these big players. We are also having couple of other players which is coming and dividing from this big circle. How is it going to be different? How this is going to be different than all other tech movements is not because that there is another maybe 5 to 10% of the society who are understanding the technology as good as those people wanna be in, but they are underdogs. They don't have money, so they need little bit more support. They need looking for more diversification in the resources and allocations of those resources.
Sure.
So that's when the true inclusion is going to happen, and that's when we are going to be creative. Currently, we are actually pushing the boxes that we had 20 years ago, but our problem was the computation. Our problem was the data storage. Now we don't have that problem. We don't really need to be part of the DARPA. In the past, obviously, everything came from military because military budgets were endless. Now,
there's something to be said for like either the Bell Labs model of R&D or the military, model, which from a financial standpoint is largely the same. Just the actors are different, right? To that. But then you lacked access once you had a product that was mass consumed, right? You were just a consumer, right? Whereas that sort of, I wonder about.
I think one difference that we forgot is that, and it's big, and I really appreciate that, the open source idea. Now everybody has access to the code. It's not, you don't really have to pay for it. Obviously, the licensing model is coming back because you need to have customers, obviously. But the open source idea is the opportunity for everybody to be part of it. And that is, I think, pushing that box a little further, that there are more players in the game right now than before. Still, We still need something else to break this cycle.
I don't disagree with you, right? And that open source model is good for creatives, but we still haven't really innovated on the financial side. So finance is still exclusionary. And that's the biggest problem, isn't it? In order for us to realize this, kind of what you and I are now starting to touch upon is this idea of the third industrial revolution, the Jeremy Lufkin, the decentralization of both transportation and energy, and that unleashes everything, right? But the third part to that has to happen is sort of the democratization of capitalism, access to capital, which that hasn't happened yet. Because you've just described so eloquently, the 1% are really the 1% in this case because they're the only ones with the access to capital, and they therefore control the means of how capital is spent in the space.
For sure. I mean, media is not helping the case. Because in media we hear those big stories because it doesn't happen every day. So we hear over and over, and that becomes amplified and amplified and amplified, and we forget everything else. In the olden days, actually the press, paper press, I think had little more diversity. Now that diversity is kind of slim because everybody writes the same thing, everybody talks about the same person, and that really takes up the creativity out of the equation, and we are also we are losing these discussions that we used to have because we're spending more time with the computers in our heads, and we are not really touching the real problems in the sense that we might actually change the future. We're just becoming the consumers every day more and more.
Giving up that agency that we have over, so many of our personal conversations, you and I end up in this realm of, placing the tool of technology in its proper context. This is now getting to that where it doesn't replace human contact, human debate, intellectual rigor in conversation. To go back for a moment to what you said about media, I mean, the sheer number of journalists has just shrunk dramatically, right? Over the course of our adulthood, you and I think about more and more even if it's, let's say as an example, international reporting. It's an Australian, it's a member of the British press corps from the UK, journalists from Africa. You don't see a lot of Americans anymore. There are thousands of positions that used to exist for international correspondents, right? For major media outlets here in the United States. They don't exist any longer. We rely almost entirely on a foreign press corps to do our own foreign corresponding. Just as one example, there's just so much less diversity. I agree with you in what's reported and who's reporting, which has an effect. It's almost like there's the parallel, right, to what you're saying earlier about within the AI realm, right? What happens when there's less participants and less inputs?
Yeah, I mean, it's now the biggest concern is that we are going to run out of money. Run out of data. Data is money, data is oxygen. So when we run out of data,
but what would be running? I'm going to push back on that. What would be running out of data? If we literally put all the data that exists into artificial intelligence, wouldn't it be enough? Because the artificial intelligence is serving human existence.
Yes, but that data has to be ready, and readiness is the question. How we're making that data ready for the artificial intelligence. What OpenAI or Google or Meta's model have been doing is the fact that they are looking at the data that they could reach, and massage it, and then put it in the models. That will run out. But the vertical by vertical data, they will be still there, but they cannot be addressed as is.
Interesting. In your opinion, are there standards of operation, whether they be informal and internal or political and external, need to be addressed prior to all of this in the last few years leading up to now? Or I just, we mentioned in a different way a moment ago this idea of human agency over use and control of technology. And this goes well beyond digital technology. It's always been that like, oh, well, the future's coming, whether you're ready or not. And it's like, well, we created these things. Can't we manipulate them in ways that are most advantageous to a wider spectrum of human beings?
Yeah, I think it's the capital economy. Economies wanna be innovative and wanna be leading. Like now the China and US, the biggest thing is the technologic war. And politicians, the bureaucracy, specifically American one, wanna stay on the side seat for a while because they don't want to cut the innovation, because they know that if they put their hand there, it's going to slow down. It's the bureaucracy.
Well, and even if they wanted to right now, we have one of the most ineffectual Congresses we've ever had. So, and I'm not even suggesting that pure regulation would be the way to create standards, right? There's many ways you can create standards, both formal and informal, but the fact still remains, it would be very difficult. I mean, they're just getting to having hearings about artificial intelligence now, it's kind of late for that,
Yeah, they invited Sam Altman, they invited a couple of famous names, and that is famous names to them, and their resources, because of the bureaucracy and hard to get there, their resources are limited. Obviously, Microsoft involved in these conversations as well. So whoever has the lobbyist up there in DC, they will have the first seat and they will have the first voice. I think the government is aware of that. So not only from the perspective they allocating the money, but also perspective from the regulations and the rules, they are staying quiet. They came out and talked several times, but I think it's just like there is a yin and yang in your question, and I really don't know the right answer, but I know that capitalism sits on top of that.
Yep. Has the last say, if you will.
Yes.
It unquestionably, for the interview, is the priority that needs to be made on artificial intelligence being useful to and representing all of us. And when we say all of us, we mean humanity, right? Perhaps we get there the more that we, in whether it's a rogue way or not, sort of command and control a piece of this data revolution at the street level. Maybe that's a romantic notion that I'm taking from sci-fi movies I've seen of underground operatives working in small bands to upload key information into the system or whatever, but like I feel like maybe that's what's required almost,
precision of data. We talk about precision medicine or precision agriculture. We are looking for the precision of data. And also, it is important to, I think, highlight we always thought that data is not valuable. But data is the oxygen, and we should give the data power, and we should give the people power, because that that is data from people, and that will be the data which is going to serve the humanity.
Yeah.
And the last thing about the artificial intelligence, we are building the AI to serve us. And when it starts not serving us, that's when the problem arises. And that is where we should start talking about the checks and balances, whether it is ethical or it is transparency. Nowadays, I'm just really worried to even talk about the ethics, because ethics is huge, and where it goes and how you address those problems systematically, we never talk about it. I think we should, from my perspective, we should go back and start figuring out where is the serving starts and where it will end.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it's really there's all kinds of de-emphasis in our education system for a generation or more now. I can only speak to the United States, although I sense that it's happened in other countries. A lack of civics, a lack of ethics, and even for those that have had ethics as as part of their curriculum, not a robust sort of discussion or debate style over time. So people really start to form their inner voice on such matters, right? Like, we've ignored that for a long time. And just more broadly, the arts and humanities, like these things that we do that help craft the way that our mind makes decisions that become more beneficial to humanity. And when people lack that in their background, they're more likely to not fall on those things when they need to at the right moment, right?
True, definitely. We definitely need to bring back the ethics classes, but we need to modernize what we understood from the ethics, and we need to put more systematic approach to that. Now I tell my students to use generative AI and tell me when they use it. And that's something that we should be doing more. Instead of telling them, hey, you cannot use generative AI, I'm going to punish you. If you tell a kid, or if you tell an employee that stop using it, they will go to the restroom and use their cell phone.
Yeah, right.
So we need more openness about it.
We need to get a relationship with it, don't we?
Yes.
If we're going to create this idea of the bionic worker, when does it happen, right?
Yeah, definitely. And we should also tell that, we should also figure a way to communicate this, that this is not going to take up the human creativity away and put people out of work.
Again, conscious decision making, right?
All in all, in that perception.
Meltem, it has been a pleasure having you here discussing neurodiversity and artificial intelligence. And I suspect we came to a few other conclusions as well regarding artificial intelligence. Always a pleasure speaking with you.
It's been great to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
SMG's Are We Here Yet podcast is a production of M the Media Project and SM Graves Associates. Learn more at smgravesassociates.com.